everyone has an issue here in TNT. Everyone is affected by this spiraling crime race. And it seems as though we're preaching about this every single week, but not many solutions are actually being put forward. Well, one independent senator actually has a plan that he is willing to share with all agencies of national security. And that independent senator is Senior Counsel Anthony Vieira. He's actually my first guest this morning, and he's with us via this Zoom platform. Good morning, Senator, and welcome to the program.
Good morning.
Well,
thank you.
Thank you for joining me. You mentioned that an all-encompassing national development strategy to deal with crime. Precisely what does this mean? In fact, how is it even different to crime plans that have been touted within the public in the past?
Yes, good question. All right, so let me start off. Yes, we had two recent statements, two crime plans. One was the declaration by the CARICOM heads following the recent symposium. And then I saw recently the Commissioner of Police put out a violent crime reduction plan. The thing is, though, that they're all identifying plans, but a plan is not a strategy. And I think what we really need is strategy. And big strategy. Strategy should be the starting point, not a line item. So, sorry.
No, I was then going to ask you, you're using this word strategy quite a bit. In fact, how is strategy and policy different? Is there any difference between strategy and policy?
Yeah. As I had indicated in my offering, there are different things: strategy, policy, and plan. So, strategy is, well, let me put it this way. A plan is a line item. It's a tactic. It's something that you would implement. It's actionable. And we have lots of little plans. So, for example, we talk about reforming the education system, strengthening forensic capabilities, making communities safer. These are wishes as well as plans. But you need to tie it all together. You need to have a vision. You need to have a grand strategy. So if you were going to build a house, for example, you just don't start hammering away. You don't start just digging holes. You really do need to have an idea of what it is you want to accomplish, where the different rooms are going to be, how they're going to be located, what sort of size. And so, coming back to the plan, a plan is really just a set of activities set out to do something. They don't need to be coherent. Plans can work in isolation. We like plans. Plans sound good. It looks as though you're accommodating something. But strategy and grand strategy is where you integrate all these different plans and chores that position you in a certain way to achieve a certain objective. And so it means that you have to you start with the end in mind, what it is you want to achieve. How is this going to occur? What is doable? And so strategy is something that is dynamic. You refine it, you tweak it as you go along. But plans are by their very nature limited. Strategy, I think, gives you the best outcome as opposed to just little plans.
Mm-hmm. Now, in terms of applying diverse law enforcement powers, I know you mentioned that strategies can work in isolation. But in terms of applying a diversity of law enforcement powers, are you referring to the fact that there needs to be an all-encompassing effort by all agencies of national security? Would that even include, for example, like what we're seeing in Tobago with the Defense Force working with the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service in terms of more foot patrols, in terms of more manpower? Is that what you're referring to?
Absolutely. I think the state has a lot of resources at its disposal, and it's been going about using this and that, but almost sporadically in an ad hoc manner. What I'm calling for is a tying together of all these resources in the form of an integrated strategy in a collaborative way, and all functioning at optimum. So yes, you need to have your police working in tandem with a working judicial legal system, in tandem with education system, in tandem with social development, because it's all tied together. Somebody sent me a video the other day with a shooting out in Morvan. Grabbing those guys, taking their guns, is just a dent. It doesn't work. Going and raiding hot spots and making a few arrests is a useful and necessary exercise, but by itself, it will not work. Our problems are deep-seated, they're deep-rooted, and they need to be dealt with in a holistic way. So yes, you get the impression, for example, like customs. Now, a lot of the arms are coming in, supposedly, through our legitimate ports in containers. But you get the feeling as though customs is working by itself, or the police go in there and they don't cooperate with customs. All these agencies need to be brought up to full speed. They need to be working in a collaborative way. Coast Guard, Air Guard, customs, police, soldiers.
Mm-hmm. Now, what you're mentioning thus far doesn't seem to be anything much new. I mean, this is something that has constant conversation is taking place regarding things that you are suggesting. Honestly, it's good, it's beneficial. I think many people will agree with what you're suggesting. I certainly agree with what you are suggesting because I myself have stated such before. But the thing is, the reception generally by those who have the authority and the power to actually implement and enact what you're saying has been cold. So what is it that we are now the ones who are the fools that are constantly repeating ourselves, that are constantly, stressing on these points without the reception that is needed for effective change?
Yeah, you're right. One of the reasons I put this out there is because, everybody is saying the same things. Everybody realizes how serious this crime situation is and we need to address it. But I'm hoping that we can inspire the leadership, the leaders in our society to really put aside differences and come together, right? We all know what needs to be done. You're absolutely right. But it's to find that will. And I really believe that for this to work, we need to get a grassroots support. I read somewhere about making change happen. And they said, if you look at it from a pyramid, the pyramid is like this. And the traditional model is that the leader is at top and the leader brings the base along. But for change to happen, you have to invert the pyramid. The leaders come from behind, but it is led from the top. So I am hoping that through this offering, our leaders will understand the importance of the need for collaboration, for strategy, to work with leaders across the whole of society. Our political leaders have to work with community leaders, they have to work with the chambers of commerce, they have to work with the media. We need to really start moving this forward, because if you think crime is bad now, my sense is it's going to get a lot worse. Mm-hmm. And so we have to really put pressure on our leaders to do what they need to do.
I'm going to come back to that point. It's an excellent and pertinent point. I'll come to that in a moment, but I just want to go back to this strategy that you mentioned earlier. The objective, the end goal, is it crime reduction? Is that the sole objective, crime reduction, or does it go beyond just reducing the numbers that are reported on a daily basis?
Good question. Well, as you would have seen in my offering, crime, to really address crime, you got to go beyond crime. So my suggestion is that we need to treat crime as a catalyst, right? We need to treat crime as a way to force us to realize the inequalities, the injustices, and the suffering that is going on in our society. We need to use crime as a catalyst to help us design a better future, to build better communities, to produce self-reliant, productive, better citizens. You know, the UN Sustainable Project about no one being left behind. Mm-hmm. Let's really activate that. And government's role really is to lead, it's to empower, it's to inspire, it's to coordinate, to facilitate. So I get a little disheartened when I hear language as though it's not our responsibility or it's somebody else to do it, can't pass the buck. No, we have to really recognize that this is also an opportunity, but we have to handle it in a certain way, and it's not just arresting bad guys. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, let's go back to what we're speaking about in regards to leaders. I think we focus a lot on law enforcement agencies, but what has been within the public domain, at least in the opinion of mine and many who I've spoken to, is that it seems as though it's politicians working with law enforcement, not law enforcement working with politicians. And there is a difference between that, between politicians working with law enforcement versus law enforcement working with politicians. Is it that there's a need, a desire for the latter to now happen, where law enforcement agencies work with politicians, whether it be for policy, whether it be for legislation, rather than the directives or the inspiration, as you just said, the confidence coming from those in authority from a political office?
Right. Well, I get a little wary when I hear the language of politicians working with law enforcement. I'm not talking, it shouldn't really be politicians in a political cap. We're really talking about government. Mm-hmm. And so the starting point for me is we could have the best police operating at optimum. The situation we have in Trinidad right now, the police cannot solve crime on their own. So government, and here I'm talking now the relevant line agencies, the Minister of National Security, the Prime Minister, the Cabinet, government has the ultimate responsibility to be the architect of a holistic crime fighting strategy. And that means not just addressing the crime hotspots and engaging in protection with the policing and working in collaboration with the police, but we're talking about long-term social involvement. Mm-hmm. Crime support operations are temporary, but we have to balance what's going on in our communities, what's going on in our education system, what's going on in the world of work. And so, yes, everybody has to work together, but someone has to lead. And this is a critical, what I would say is a missing ingredient. If you're going to lead, you must have a vision. You must have a plan. Where are we going to with this? We're not just raiding hotspots and arresting bad guys. How are we taking this forward? And that is what I'm hoping we can get the public to think about, to talk about. It's really to engage in critical thinking and for people to start coming together. This is an opportunity to transform Trinidad and Tobago if properly handled.
You know, Senator Anthony Vieira, leaders here in Trinidad and Tobago exist because everybody wants to be a leader. Everybody wants to lead. But leadership does not necessarily exist. Not everybody has leadership skills and qualities and characteristics, yet everybody wants to lead. If that is the case, then aren't we a bit doomed? Because to a certain extent, we're now focusing on the public's, their participation, their involvement, as you said, from a grassroots level. But there's another issue with that, and that is the education within the public as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The fact is we have leaders, but they need to, I think, change gears and really lead. And you lead by having a vision, selling that vision, and empowering people. You lead from behind. But it's not just enough to have leadership. One of the points that I keep continuously making is that we are operating with systems and institutions that are not functioning at optimum. Mm-hmm. So in this leadership, we need to upgrade all our systems and processes. We need to really engage in serious institutional reform, because if you have all the ideas and you're trying to make your objectives happen, but you're trapped in an existing framework that is undoing or stymieing your efforts. You're going nowhere fast. We have a lot of outdated and archaic regulations, inefficient service commissions. We are operating, again, you talk about it, we're operating in silos. We need to look at the thing as a system, an integrated network. So I think the leadership point is where institutions and systems are inefficient, they need to be strengthened. And part of it is our colonial heritage. There's a word called isomorphic. And what that talks about is that we've copied all the forms of the developed countries, but we are unable to reproduce the outcomes that you want because we just copied the forms without understanding the substance. And so we really do need to examine ourselves, our culture, who we are as a people, what we want to take forward, And I keep saying that the purpose of government is not to follow procedures, it's to provide services to citizens. So you have to start back with the end in mind, what it is you want to do, how are we going to achieve it, and then you work your systems and processes toward that end.
So I hear you very well and clear in regards to reforms are necessary for the institutions that currently exist. But who are the ones that should be charged or responsible with planting a new education model? Are we leaving that solely up to government?
Well, this is where I think we have an elections coming up. I think all the people who hope to go up for office and to get citizens' votes, they need to now come up with serious plans and leadership and sincere offerings as to how they're going to address crime, how they're going to deal with the inequalities in our system, the cost of living issue, which has gone up. And so they have to now be responsive because I think those are the two big issues for citizens, crime and the cost of living. And if our leaders are unable to address that, I think they will be disconnected with the population.
Mm-hmm. And finally, Senator, your expectations versus reality. Is it that there is an expectation that some of what you have recommended, some of things that you have outlined, will actually be considered and adopted? Because the reality is, I can say, listen, I'm going to consider what you're suggesting, but it goes in one ear and comes out the other. What is your expectations, let's say, compared to the past versus the reality of the situation?
Yeah, it's true. As the Chinese say, talk, don't cook rice. We do. Okay, so let's step back. We do have a statement from the police on how they plan to reduce violent crime. We do have a declaration from the heads of government stating what their intentions are and what they hope to achieve. So we have to now hold them to that, but we need to get them to take it beyond just crime. We need to get them to understand that this, and so what I'm talking about is, my hope is that civil society, we heard Brian Lara talking about his experience, we hear religious leaders talking about the need to come together. This is serious, and I think there is an avalanche of a population crying out for support, crying out for help. This pressure needs to be maintained on our leaders. We need to hear from them to come up and do something concrete. It can't be just left to the same old, as you say, just another talk shop. No, this has to be a catalyst.
Mm-hmm. Independent Senator Anthony Vieira, Senior Counsel, thank you very much for joining me this morning. A very intriguing conversation, a discussion indeed, which I hope goes beyond just the 30 minutes that we've had this discussion this morning. For now, we're going to have to pause due to time, but thank you very much for donating your time to share with us what you see as necessary, especially as it relates to a national development strategy. Thank you very much, sir, and all the best to you. Keep well.
Thank you. My pleasure. All the best. Bye.
Bye-bye.